This is for wealth tech founders who are tired of those conversations that never turn into real yeses. I'm Joshua Wilson, and my world is buyer psychology and adoption, why they choose and why they don't choose what they say they want.
Hey, I'm Marshall. I've spent 19 years focused on operating a wealth tech in this space and finding myself hitting all these same challenges that founders hit in the space. The last 4 have been focused on venture capital and investing in the best of ideas in wealth tech. And Josh and I kept running into a lot of the same challenges. Found ourselves talking about the challenges of growing a wealth tech, being a founder, and all the common things that they run into. He saw it on his side, and I saw it on my side. And that's why we launched WealthTech Founder Lab, to diagnose what's blocking you and help you fix it. And one of those things that Josh brought up in the last episode is committees. Maybe you've been in a Baptist church, they got committees, but wealth managers, they got more committees. And their committees have the ability to say no. And so most founders think they're selling to one person. If I just get the owner, the product manager, the division lead, the head of financial planning to say yes, sure, they've got a budget, they got an expense account, they can just sign up and go from there. But that's when the committees blindside you.
And if you can't arm that champion to win internally and have the conversations across the organization that line up with the priorities of the organization, then your product is just never going to be choosable, no matter how great those features and benefits look.
This is a really common issue because unless you've worked in a larger enterprise that has these committees, it's a mystery how they operate. I can remember the first few deals that I worked on in this environment, and I was working with my sponsor to adopt some wealth tech. And then all of a sudden they came back and said, oh, the committee said no, or the committee didn't approve it. I was mystified. I was like, you never told me about the committee. What committee? I didn't present to a committee. I was never invited to a committee. And what happens at these committee meetings? Do they even know what they're doing? So this whole idea of committee, the size of the organization really matters. If you're going after a bank, committees on committees, secret committees, smoke chimney, black smoke coming out of the chimney committees. But in smaller organizations, you bypass the committees. This is where a lot of capital chases on the venture side, companies that can grow quickly and the buyers can say yes quickly. Typically, this happens in the independent advisor space. Typically, you've got an owner, entrepreneur, maybe a couple owners, and they decide, hey, is this going to make me more money? Is this going to save me more money? Or is this a big strategic initiative? And I got money to spend on those things. And I can say yes. If there's a committee, I tell the committee the decision to make. But the larger the organization you get, these committees are defensive. They are built to slow down decisions, slow down change, which equals risk. And there are hidden power players in those committees. So, Josh, give me your experience in dealing with these committees and how they show up as challenges for founders.
Yeah, I think that first off, it's really about what do they really mean? When they say this has got to go to committee, got to talk to the committee, what are they really saying? They're often saying, I can't carry this alone. And that is code for a few different things. There are hidden vetoes, whether it's operations or IT, compliance, risk, brand. There is ultimately someone who can kill this quietly or who can just make this difficult. This is where a nuance I'll throw in there with what you said about big organizations and small organizations. Just because you have a small organization that appears that it can move quickly doesn't mean there's no hidden veto. That hidden veto can be via a compliance partner. For example, I worked with an RIA and they had a compliance problem in the past and got hand smacked for it. And so everything was, they hired a new compliance consultant who was extremely draconian because they'd been in trouble before. And so that person had the idea of everything's going to be more difficult. We're going to slow it down. Here's all the risk of everything. And so it was honestly overboard. And so just the influence of this compliance partner was such that they weren't really a hidden veto, but they were the person that this was going to be talked to about. and that person was going to slow everything down and point out every risk, and they're not getting the answers. Their job is just to make sure that you see all the risk. And oftentimes they don't really see it because they're not spending an hour doing homework on you. They're glancing at your website, looking at a couple of things and saying, oh, here, okay, here's what jumps out. So there are hidden vetoes that technically don't have power, but they can slow things down. That can be your officers, it can be a senior advisor. They're hidden vetoes. Another thing it can be is, I need a defensible story, right? I like it, but I can't explain it cleanly without you in the room. And so they really need to bring other people into this because they don't want to carry this alone. Is saying something about someone as far as a risk taker if they're willing to carry this alone. So they're often protecting their reputation by putting this in committee. Because if this dies, I don't want to look foolish for being the champion. I want to bring this in front of everyone as, hey, let's think about this. And if it goes well, I'm going to try to claim it. But until we've decided it's going well, this needs to be in committee, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And this gets a little bit to our last episode, which is, what homework have you done to know who's on the committee? What are their strategic goals, opportunities, risks? What's everybody's decision-making criteria on this? This gets back to asking good questions. You as a founder need to be asking questions about who's involved in making decisions at your organization. How do decisions get made? What does the security compliance process look like? If you're not asking that question, don't think they're not going to take you through a security and compliance process. Like you're afraid bringing it up will create this big work to do that they're going to do. You want to get ahead of it early. You want to understand who all's involved in the decision, what their goals and objectives are. And you want to be orchestrating a group. Yes. You want each of these people that are represented in that committee. Ideally, you want to map out who they all are. You want to map out what they want and what they don't want. And then you want to figure out how to go around that table and make each one of them a proponent of moving forward with your solution. Because this de-risks the stakeholder by bringing you in if they can connect the dots to the other stakeholders to get them interested in saying yes. So you're trying to orchestrate momentum culminating in the committee making a decision. So here's a question for you, Joshua. What's the psychological reason that committees vote later, even when they like it?
A lot of this is this blame avoidance machine. A yes creates risk, creates work, and it creates accountability. So a later keeps everyone safe. It keeps budgets clean. It keeps reputations intact. Also, saying yes is rarely just adopting your tool. It's implicitly admitting that the old way wasn't good enough. And sometimes that's fine because we've already said, hey, the old way is not good enough. We're moving on.
Yeah. This thing's on fire.
Exactly.
Yeah, everybody sees it.
But if it's not, then it's a status threat. People will avoid that threat even when they like the idea. They're not voting on your product. It's not about you. They vote on how exposed they feel.
It essentially gets back to, will this product expose me? Will this product make me look like a hero? And will this product, if it gives me some marginal, it doesn't really expose me, but it doesn't really make me a hero. But there's a risk that if I promote it, it goes bad. These are different things we've covered in the last episode and this episode that gets into the buyer psychology of whether or not they're going to take you forward. Founders think it's just about, if I can show you time saved, if I can show you new ways to generate revenue, if I can show you a modern technology stack, they think those are the compelling value propositions. But I'm 100% in your corner, having seen this dozens, if not hundreds of times. There's someone in the committee who is exposed or their status is going to be reduced or impaired in some way by this decision.
Another point on status there is also, does someone need to be involved earlier in the process and this going into committee? Okay. This reminds me of, you ever see movies about ancient Rome and there's the Senate and they all go on the Senate floor and they talk and they give their point. But the smart ones, they go and talk to individuals first and make sure they're going to agree. and get them on their side first before they go and talk. You don't try to convince everybody as an audience at once, right? What you want to do is find the people that have that influence, especially the people that are the protectors, the defenders, time defenders, the compliance defenders. These are the people that often, if they're not consulted early, they're going to be more likely to want to defense up. So if you find out that, hey, we've got this compliance consultant, like you want to find that out, hey, before we bring this to committee, how about I take 30 minutes with Steve? And that way you have a chance to talk with Steve and get Steve's objections out of the way, hear what his initial thoughts are. Now Steve feels like he's in the loop. And now Steve is aware of it. So he's like, so Steve's not coming in with a stamp of approval, but Steve has taken down the barrier. He's removed the goalie. He's not helping you score. But the problem is Steve's never going to help you score. But Steve will play goalie and keep you from scoring, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about pulling the goalie. And so if you can get in front of him, figure out what's legitimate, and also figure out, hey, some of this is status stuff and he's been consulted, he's been respected. Okay, great. Now he's not going to be in the way. He's not going to be on my side, but he's not going to be in the way. The biggest problem is not that you don't have enough champions, is that you've got too many defenders.
You got to map out the committee. You got to understand who's on the committee, what their agenda is. Do they know this is coming up for a vote? Nobody wants to be surprised. If I'm the head of operations and the person who's in charge of technology comes up with this new solution that's going to impact all my workflow of my team and my priorities and my people, well, why wasn't I consulted earlier? You must think that our group doesn't do the right thing here or whatever. And so this whole idea, that's why you got to map out the committee, understand what each of them is interested in. You want to meet with them first, ideally individually, introduced by your promoter or your point of contact. And you want to understand their goals in this situation, what would make them look good, what are the risks or concerns that they have about this decision. And slowly you get around that table to where you talk with them all, you know kind of what their concerns are. That's how you increase your probability of a yes at a committee vote.
We talked a lot about the psychology behind this stuff, Marshall, but let's pull this down. Where do you see committees stall deals in WealthTech? Where do committees stall deals?
Yeah, most predictably, it's going to be security and compliance. And here's where it's going to show up. The question is going to be, how many clients do you have in production? What kind of clients are they? Are they clients as big or as complex as us? These are the signals that will eventually get to a compliance group that will say, hey, we don't want to be clearing through the forest with this company. We don't know if they're going to continue to exist. If they don't raise another round of venture, they're going to go out of business. If we put all of our clients in their data center and they get hacked, it's our name and our jobs on the line. And so this is the most common place in committee that people in the wealth tech space where they get a no. You're just not, it's not that you aren't doing a great thing. It's not that you can't, that we want to use your system or your solution or want to bring you in, but we can't get this part of the committee to sign off on it. And that group, generally, the larger the organization, has a stronger card to play. Like if they don't like it, you can't go anywhere with it.
So this whole compliance and procurement, what does that really do to the founders' timelines?
Oh, it just stretches it out. You should 2 to 3x every timeline you think, especially with an enterprise buyer, of what you think it's going to take to make a decision because of this factor. And it takes longer. And that's the challenge when it gets to capital. So your capital stack has to support your enterprise buyer adoption cycle, not just the sales cycle, but getting a contract, getting it into the implementation process, getting it finally adopted, and then maybe you get paid, hopefully once it's implemented. This stretches this out. A committee with an unknown dynamic is a big X factor that is hard to measure and comprehend. We talked a lot about this. A lot of founders struggle with. If you're a founder and you've lost a deal after a great call, a great pitch, you thought everyone was excited about what you were doing, keep showing up and hearing more about what trips you up. If you know someone who's also struggling with this, share it with them. And hopefully, we're equipping founders to do better when it comes to entering the market in the wealth tech space. And that's what we're about here at WealthTech Founder Labs. If you want to see exactly where your deal sits and where it's breaking, champion the committee, the proof, or the route that you're running, run the WealthTech Founder Lab Growth Diagnostic.
And if you want help building what that diagnostic reveals, then stay tuned, because we're going to be talking about the cohort that'll be following the diagnostic as well. Thanks for tuning in today.